In your professional opinion, do you think this could be an animal?
Not at all.
Brian Moss owns a couple of ranches in the Madisonville area. He's also the owner of AAAC Wildlife Removal. He mentions these strange clues. The grass wasn't disturbed, there's no blood spill, and no noticeable tracks.
For everything to be undisturbed, the grass around it, no bloodshed, that's not a pack of coyotes. It's not a wild animal that's done that at all.
Another clue, the precision of the cuts.
They're not precision hunters. They're very aggressive, and they want to get the most they can as quickly as they can.
Could it be non-human, say an extraterrestrial being?
Stranger things have happened.
There might be a whole lot more to this story than I thought. Hey guys, JDR Exospace here. So a lot of you asked me to take a look at cattle mutilations, and even though I initially resisted, I did look into the story, and what I found actually shocked me. And I promise if you stick around to the end of this video, you won't be able to predict where this is headed. So this phenomenon has been going back several decades and even reached a fever pitch in the 1970s to the extent where the FBI had to open an official investigation into the matter, and that investigation wrapped up with the conclusion that this was primarily animal predation. However, the interesting part about this story is that the phenomenon never really stopped. Take for example this story that was posted on Madison County Sheriff's Office official Facebook page in April of 2023. Ranchers advised a 6-year-old longhorn cross cow had been found lying on her side, deceased and mutilated on their ranch. A straight, clean cut with apparent precision had been made to remove the hide around the cow's mouth on one side, leaving the meat under the removed hide untouched. The tongue was also completely removed from the body with no blood spill. It was noted that there were no signs of struggle and the grass around the cow was undisturbed. No footprints or tire tracks were noted in the area. Ranchers also reported that no predators or birds would scavenge the remains of the cow, leaving it to decay untouched for several weeks. And while looking into the case, they actually found several other examples in the area of similar style mutilations. The other cows were found in the same condition, lying on one side with the exposed side of the face cut along the jawline and the tongue once again completely removed. On 2 of the 5 cows, a circular cut was made removing the anus and the external genitalia. This circular cut was made with the same precision as the cuts noted around the jawlines of each cow. So in all of these cases, the face had been removed from one side of the cow and the tongue completely removed with no signs of blood spill, any tracks in the area, or any signs of a disturbance that you would typically see with animal predation. Or take for example this story in 2019 in Oregon. Now the different part about this story is that these were actually very valuable bulls in this rural part of Oregon, and they had their internal organs removed. And just like in that story in Texas, it was concluded that in this story it isn't bears, wolves, cougars, or poisonous plants, nor were the animals shot. There were also no signs of disturbance in the area, no footprints, and no tracks. So now that we've identified the problem, let's try to figure out the solution. Let's figure out what's going on here. Now, fair warning, before I get any further into the story, some of these images are going to be a little bit graphic, so fair warning, just fast forward if you don't want to see some of this stuff. So this article is actually produced by the Alberta government. It's called Coyote Predation of Livestock, and it goes into some of the details about how different predators prey on livestock, some of their patterns, and how to recognize which type of animal it is. And the interesting thing to note here is when you're recognizing a predator attack, it almost always shows signs of struggling prey, including broken and flattened vegetation, drag marks, and lots of blood or trails of blood, bleeding and bruising of tissues that occur when an animal is bitten, clawed, and injured. Now what's going on in this story is that there are no clear signs of predation, so this kind of rules out initial predator attacks, and you're only left with scavengers. And the reason I wanted to point out coyotes is the most common scavengers of dead bodies are going to be coyotes. Coyote feeding usually begins on organs consumed through the flank. You can see this is a picture of a sheep where that's basically been disemboweled. Now domestic dogs are sort of a unique situation here because they don't just kill for meat, they kill for sport. They're not really interested in scavenging dead bodies. The domestic dogs that are kind of just pack up and running feral in some of these areas, they kill for sport, and so there is mutilation that occurs. But as you can see in this picture, they tend to occur around the mouth, and this actually isn't as uncommon as you would think.
The dogs would get a hold of the cow's mouth and tear their tongue to pieces so the cow's not able to eat.
And it's not just happening at one farm.
I've spoken with neighbors and they say about 8 cows total in the neighborhood have been attacked.
And again here, the normal focus of attack by coyotes on newborn calves is the flank. Bears will also attack, but they tend to bite around the neck and head. And then wolves also tend to focus on the hindquarters and go right for the guts, the meatiest bits. Alright, and again, we're going to see some graphic stuff here, but if we're comparing what we just read in that Alberta document to some of the images that were taken from these actual cattle mutilations, you can see it doesn't actually look anything like that. Here's one of the cattle that were mutilated and had their tongue removed in Oregon, notably exactly the same situation that was described in Texas, with the side of their face removed down to the jawline and their tongue completely removed. Okay, so if it's not coyotes, what else would normally scavenge on dead cows? And the obvious choice on that becomes vultures. And vultures are actually very interesting because they identify dead bodies, as many people have probably noticed, very quickly, and it's due to a very strong sense of smell. They've actually used vultures for decades in the oil and gas industry to detect natural gas leaks in pipelines, because natural gas that's used to heat your home is actually odorless. They add a compound to it called ethyl mercaptan. Very curiously, the same type of compound that is emitted from dead and decaying bodies. And so vultures are very good at picking up this smell from a very far distance, and so they can hone in on dead bodies very quickly. Sort of interesting how they're not seeing vultures on any of these bodies either. Now, to be fair, there is one theory that even coyotes and vultures tend to avoid dead cows because of some of the compounds, chemicals, antibiotics that we may be pumping into the cows, and they don't seem to like the taste or the smell, but we haven't been able to verify that yet. Okay, so I think in many of these cases, perhaps we've ruled out predation and scavenging, so what are some of the other common theories? One of the very popular theories seems to be some kind of satanic cults. Then it becomes, did they stumble across a dead cow in the field and just randomly take out all their organs? Were they searching for dead cows in a field? Did they kill the cow themselves without any means of detection? It's fairly easy to do a toxicology analysis and tell whether there was any poison in the system, but there doesn't seem to be any poison in many of these cattle either. And again, just logically, if you need some kind of cow heart or something for a satanic ritual, you can go to just about any local butcher shop and I'm sure you can get the meat that they're not usually using that they put in the sausage anyway. It seems like a lot of trouble to go through to get these things at very rural, hard to reach places. And many of these bodies that are found actually take several days for the cowboys in these rural areas to even find them because they're very open, remote areas. Okay, so what about the military? That's also another popular theory. Are they doing research, some kind of clandestine research on these cattle? And again, that just seems really unlikely to me. And while I can't disprove it, it seems like a lot of work. If I was the federal government and I wanted to do experiments on cattle, I would just buy a ranch somewhere so I'd have all the cattle I would need. I wouldn't be flying aircraft around all over the country just killing cows and leaving bodies in random places where people could find them. Okay, now let's pause for a second and reevaluate what we have so far. We have cattle mutilated in such a way that all of the local experts, the ranchers, the wildlife experts, the sheriff's office are all concluding that these are mutilations and not just predation. I think we've ruled out most of the typical scavengers that we'd see. Satanists and military just doesn't seem to be super likely. So what is there that we're missing?
A few years back, one rancher called me and said, you got to get out here, Sheriff. One of my steers mutilated. And then 15, 20 minutes later, a bright orange light came up, about the size of a beach ball. He came up off the ground, then he split in two. What it got me with it, the same size after they split.
Wow.
The one ball just went flying north. He just took off and he was gone in just a few seconds.
Did it make any type of sound?
Not even a humming sound. And I still think to this day, and it'd take a lot to convince me otherwise, it wasn't from this planet.
Oh, man.
And now we're back to aliens. But let's not be so hasty. Let's take a critical look at this and evaluate the evidence. So far, we have dead cattle all over the country going back several decades with no clear motive, no clear means of death, and mutilations. But hold on here, I seem to remember reading something in the Reddit whistleblower story tied to the aliens' potential digestive system. Given the absence of teeth, the narrowness and rigidity of the esophagus, the absence of a true stomach, and the absence of defecation, it is strongly believed that EBOs can only consume food in liquid form. It is assumed that, given the high metabolic needs of their brains, this food would have a high carbohydrate concentration. In order to meet other metabolic needs, there must also be a high protein content in the food consumed. These two statements are supported by the type of enzyme secreted by the digestive organ. It is therefore speculated that the food consumed is a sort of broth rich in sugar and protein, which probably also has a high copper content. Given that the strict limitations on the type of food that they can consume, it's unlikely that this type of creature could survive in our biosphere without technological support. Now, this is very interesting, and while I've already said I cannot prove anything is true or false with this Reddit whistleblower story, it is written in such a detailed way that I do tend to lean a little bit more towards there might be something here. But that gives us a vector to try to figure out why they might be removing organs from cattle. Now, why would aliens be taking organ meat and not just pulverizing the entire cow and turning it into a protein shake? And I found a curious link in a very unlikely place, and it can be found in the world of bodybuilding. Now, if you don't know who Tristan Lee is, he's actually a famous bodybuilder, but the thing that's unique about him, other than his shredded physique, is his diet. And I will let him explain some of those things that is unique about his diet and why he eats the way he does.
A reason that you're eating this, right?
Yeah, so organ meats in general have a lot of micronutrients in them. Beef heart in particular has coenzyme Q10, which helps with production of ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate.
Ah, now we've arrived at a very interesting thought, haven't we? While researching this video, I heard so many theories that just sounded so outlandish about why aliens might be interested in cattle, or the military for that matter, and it seems like almost everyone is overlooking the most obvious reason why they would be interested in cattle. It seems far more likely that they would be interested in cattle for the exact same reasons that we are, because they're hungry. What does the the Cleveland Clinic, for example, have to say about organ meats? First of all, what is organ meat? Internal organs and other parts of the animal besides muscle meat, including blood, bones, and skin, brain, heart, kidneys and liver, intestines and tripe, sweetbreads, pancreas and thymus, and tongue. Does this not seem like a far more rational explanation than some clandestine experiment by the military or aliens doing some kind of hemoglobin-based research on cows? Cows really aren't that interesting. Why would aliens particularly care about cattle all that much other than for food? And we also have to avoid making a false assumption that this is a phenomenon that is unique to cattle. It is very likely that this could also be happening to deer and other large game animals. It's just that nobody seems to care about those animals all that much because there's not any money tied up in deer in the wild as much as there is cattle worth thousands and thousands of dollars. So while I by no means claim to have solved the cattle mutilation problem, I do think this is an interesting theory worth advancing into the public discourse. So as always, I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say, so let me know in the comments what you think. Am I as crazy as everyone else and coming up with some crazy conspiracy theory, or am I onto something here? And please don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn notifications on so you know when I post new videos. We're not done exploring these topics together, and there's a lot more to come, so I'll catch you guys on the next one.